So this is part 2 of our Photography and Alchemy series with Katherine Leonard. If you remember, week before last, we took a week off for summer break. So week before last, Katherine curated a gallery of photographs working from the archives around the idea of photography and alchemy and the role of photography in personal and cultural transformation. And one of the requests that we had, and one of the big questions that people posed, was the struggle to edit your own work. How do we look at this collection of images that we've created and try to get to the heart of the matter of the work? And then further, how do we put that work out in the world and understand the audience that it's supposed to land with? And so we asked Katherine. She was so generous. If you don't know, Katherine Leonard specializes in collaborating one-on-one with photographers, artists, and small business owners in a very dynamic process that she's created of helping grow and visualize and launch their brand identities. And Katherine moves from this personal, deeply, really emotional and intuitive way, and believes that it begins at the heart and then we move out into the world from there. So she believes in the power of the medium transform and to bring to light one's own deepest longings and aspirations. So we reached out to Katherine and asked her if she would be willing, which is very courageous, to do her process on Zoom. We did a raffle, so people just submitted their names and we used a computer raffle system, and we pulled 2 very generous folks who are willing to volunteer to have their work looked at and talked about. And so I want to appreciate Rita and Monica, and you'll hear more about them as we get going. So Katherine starts all of her portfolio review processes with this very wonderful inner inquiry process, and she's going to talk a little bit about that first, what her process is for helping people get to the heart of the matter of their own work, and then she's actually going to walk us through that process. So thank you, Katherine, so much for being here.
Thank you, guys, all of you. So yeah, this is like a first for me. First, to dissect what I do into put it into words and some kind of order. It's been 25 plus years where I've been doing what I do. It's incredibly intuitive and in my DNA at this point. So it was an interesting request, and I took it up. I was really excited to think about what could I put into words to share with everyone. It's just my point of view. It's what works for me-ish. There's always an ish. There's always, it's a beautiful, fluid process. If you are open, you never know what's gonna happen. So in the editing process, when you're looking at pictures, it's emotional for me. And I'm very honored to look at the pictures that you've made. I realize that it's your life, it's your essence, it's your baby. And I'm very cognizant of that fact. So I do spend time in relationship with my people so that there is a trust. And it is very important for me to establish that there is a trust before I go in and give you my input, so I just wanted to say that. And so this is the first time that I'm, coming out and saying what I do. First time ever, 2020, why not? And it's also the first time I've ever done a quote unquote live, thing with pictures and so forth with photographers. And so, I wanted to say a quote actually, because one of the curators that really has influenced me is John Zarkowski, who is no longer with us, but many of you might know of his work. He was the curator for the Museum of Modern Art Photography for, 20 plus years, 30 years in New York, 1961 to 1991. And I met him in New York back in the day, and he was amazing, of course. And at that time, the kind of people that I was around, I had no idea really how special they were. I was at Tina Barney's event, and she was a friend, and and John Tarkovsky's there, and it's just insane. What the level of influence that I had growing up in the industry in New York. So I look back now, and I realize that some of who I am and my point of view comes from some of these influences indirectly, and so John is one of those people. I love this little quote. I'm just going to read it because he says, photography is the easiest thing in the world if one is willing to accept pictures that are flaccid, limp, bland, banal, indiscriminately informative, and pointless. But if one insists in a photograph that is both complex and vigorous, it is almost impossible. So with that, we will launch into the process of looking at pictures. So it's, from the photographer's point of view, it's an incredibly personal situation. You have gone out and decided you were going to make pictures. And let's back up, Susan. This is very specifically about personal work. So I totally use a different lens with commercial work, with fine art. There's a different way of criteria for looking at work. Okay, you have to take into consideration some things, and we're going to come up against that tonight. But this is personal work we talked about, and we talked about how this is the time right now for photographers and artists to really take this potent opportunity, and walk through this time of transformation and create and collect and make and contain a body of work that reflects this time. You will not regret it, because you will look back and it is boom, 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 whether you print it and it's bound or whether you have it stored somehow, some way that you've taken some time at a certain point and looked at it and made something out of it, because this is your story. This is the story of this pandemic from your point of view. It's a little sliver, of course, but it's important. I think it's very important. And I also think, Susan, to go back to the other couple of sessions that we've had, starting with my friend Judith, where I popped in, the power of the personal is always translatable. No matter if you are approaching an editor or a curator, or you're approaching a creative director, or you're approaching your website, or whatever you're approaching, when you have in your bag of tricks a very strong personal body of work, or several bodies of work, it ends up completing the circle of you. It's like completes the circle. So whatever client or person or anyone, whoever your target audience is that's looking at you, that you want to look at you, they will be very fulfilled to see your personal work included somewhere when they search you, somehow, to sort of finish the picture of you, if you understand what I'm saying. So with that, we are understanding that we're looking at personal work today. And I did hesitate a little bit to take a deep dive into personal work, because it's so deeply personal right now. So I think we had Rita and Monica and we each had a conversation a little bit in advance before I dove into their work, just to make sure everything's cool, that it's okay that I look at it and make some suggest my point of view. And we really didn't have a lot of time. I mean, in the scope of things, the amount of time is a little bit more. This is kind of like speed dating right now. We're speed dating each other. It's like, hi, I'm this, I'm that, and here's my pictures. Oh, okay, quick. So it's cool, man. We're gonna be all right. But I'm just gonna. I just had to say that the personal is special. So, but generally speaking, let me go through. Do you want me to, Susan, to go through my little criteria that I figured out?
Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic to help frame sort of how you approach work, and questions particularly that we might be able to take home and apply ourselves to how we might think about editing down a body of work.
Totally. So I realized that I could break it down into like my 5 essential, aspects of making a strong visual presentation. And again, these are just parameters. So identify is the first. You want to identify, like, what is your personal style? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your specific goals? And who is your target audience? Very key. And I come from that because I was trained in New York. I was trained in the business, and, making portfolios pop was like my specialty, and I did it a lot to get campaigns and to, it was like big time real. So, knowing who you're pitching to, or knowing who your audience is, or knowing who is part of my brain's way of looking at it. Okay, so that's just what it is. After you have sort of identified some of the basics, now we're going to evaluate, okay? Now we're going to evaluate strengths and weaknesses of the individual pictures, okay? Because you're putting together a story. So yes, it is going to be a body of work, but it's comprised of individual pictures. Each one has integrity. So you have to look and evaluate the pictures as part of the group next. First, you look at the strengths and weaknesses of the individual pictures, of course. Then, only then, you look at the pictures as part of the group. From my point of view, what I do, I look at tonality. There's a flow that happens, and that's the next thing, is flow. But the tonality of things in that body of work really has an influence on the viewer. So you keep that in mind. It's like a little, I don't know, it's just something that's there now in my brain. And I look at it, I look at color, and I see it as part of the flow. And then I evaluate impact. Okay, this is something, for one or for the other person, it might be different. But for me, I look at what has impact, what doesn't. And along the way, in this aspect of the process, when you are evaluating the integrity of each picture in the big picture of the whole thing, is like, does this picture add to the story? Does it add to the body of work, or does it subtract? So if it doesn't add, it often subtracts, right? And so I tend to be a pretty tight editor, and I can go any way I need to, but I like less is more is kind of my motto. And I feel like the story could go on and on and on, but where is the juice? And if it's not kind of, juicy in those ways of that I just spoke about, then I might eliminate it. And I often eliminate things really fast. And then I'll add back if I feel like the story needs another piece, and these ones need to talk to that one. And it's a process. It's like a puzzle for me. So after you've done these two first processes, then you're ready to like integrate it, right? So now what are you going to do to put it together? You really do have to sort of reimagine the new grouping. You have to ask, you've picked all the ones you like, you've maybe put them together, and you've, played with the order a little bit. How do they flow? And that's just a word that happens to be, super applicable, because flow is everything. And I know this also from all my years in New York, looking at portfolios and reviewing, and, many photographers dropped off portfolios. I mean, piles of them I looked at every day that I could, in between stuff. And, people who are looking at a lot of work, you want to keep their attention. So you're very, like, I'm trained to, like, keep attention, don't waste anybody's time. And so if there's like a bump in the road, that book goes on the side. I've seen it a million times. I mean, people don't have time. Like if they see, there's no continuity here. This picture, the energy drops. It's not the same as the other feeling. And a lot of this is seemingly intangible, but I'm just saying there is a flow thing that happens, You start to get to understand and feel what that looks like. And so also part of integrating is you want to basically, you're telling the story, but in a new and more dynamic way. So first you have all these pictures. They represent a body of work that you've worked on. They may or may not fit together. So now you're like, you've said about creating a new story with all these pictures. And so it's just really important that, you realize that when you're doing this, like whatever you're doing, it should be more dynamic than how you started with this lump of pictures that are all over. Okay, now what are you going to make out of it? So with that, I say no fear, no rules. Once you're at this point, you've kind of done the intellectual stuff, you've made some decisions, you've edited out some ones that didn't make the cut. And now you really have to move forward and be fearless and just put it together in a way that you feel intuitively is telling your story in a way that feels, right to you at that point. So now, the end of that is really, disseminate. And so now you've put together your story. I guess I can back up and say, one of the reasons I'm probably doing this tonight is Susan, suggested that, knowing some of this stuff would be good for you and a partner, a buddy, like someone you trust. If you don't get an outside, critique that's professional, at least if you understand sort of some of the parameters, and then you can work on your body of work with someone that you trust, one of your photographer friends or editors that or something like that. So the next part is really dissemination. Like, how are you going to get it out? You understand you have to engage your audience. You may be at the point where you feel, you've done a beautiful job of making a story. Now what? So you have a lot of options today. You can print it and bind it and put it in a book. You can put it on your website. You can send it out to clients. You can share it on social media. You can even paste it on buildings. I think somebody said that in the last one. Let's do like a rogue. Somebody said, let's do a rogue, to hell with, institutional, exhibitions. Like, let's just put them up on buildings, but you can do whatever you want with your work. And you should. I think that sharing it and getting it out there in the end is, the real crux of it happens with your personal work. It's personal. So it's for you. This is the place where the same rules don't apply in making these pictures as in the ones for your commercial or your other parts of your career, right? So this is the place where you play, where you experiment, where you go a little crazy, where you get messy. I think I said that to Rita on our session. So it is important that you do that and you find a different way of showing your work. So, there are no rules about how you show your work, your personal work. I love the ways I've seen personal work shown all over the place, super creative, but the most important thing is that it is a form of self-expression for you. And it probably does feel good to bind it in some way, to put a boundary around it and to make something out of it. That's kind of a gift to yourself, first and foremost. But at the same time, it's a gift to the people that you want to share it with, because it's so deeply personal. I get it. It's very personal, but if you do it in such a way that you feel really good about, then I think you might find that you'll always have some personal project that you include in your, in your body of work that's always changing and growing, From my point of view, it's therapy. That's, I do have a master's in psychology and I do use that in my work every day. And I do find that there's an incredibly therapeutic aspect to, especially the personal work, right? So, but everybody's different. You can do whatever you want.
Thank you, Catherine. I thought a next step might be to you just select one of the photographers and we'll let them introduce themselves and then we can, talk through a little bit about your process. Do you have one you would like to have go first?
Yeah. Let's start with Rita. Hey, Rita.
Hey everybody, my name's Rita. I am a photographer, writer, and musician, so I kind of work in a lot of different modalities. My photography background is mostly in photojournalism, so that's kind of the way that I come at it, kind of a documentary perspective. And also mention that I lived in Minnesota for most of my life, and I moved to North Carolina just last fall, so like right before the pandemic hit, and so that was kind of a big, I think, thing in making my personal work, just having this journey.
Perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, so what I did was, I don't know, Susan, did you have those basic questions you wanted to put up, or should I just mention them?
You could just mention them. That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought for the photographers who are putting together this little thing tonight, just because I didn't know who was going to be doing it. I don't know anyone personally. And so I just asked the photographers to tell me what their goals were for the pictures, who their target audience was. Is there an overarching theme that you wish to share, and tell me the story of this group of pictures. So, the questions are are really key, because in answering them, it does help sort of direct you in your process of editing, and me in my process of curating or mentoring you along the way. So knowing the goals for the pictures is, it's important, because if you're making pictures for yourself, that's one thing. If you're making them to so that you could maybe get a gallery show, that's another one. If so the goal is going to drive kind of some of the decision making in the process. It will. Your target audience is just an ancillary, it's just the same thing. I mean, it's like, whoever you think might be looking at it, or who you'd like to look at it in the editing process, not in the making process. I'm not saying you make pictures for someone else. But I am saying that as you are sculpting the presentation, it helps if you have a goal, or you understand who might be looking at it, that you want to look at it. And then I just wanted to know, because I didn't know anything about anyone that I was going to be working with. I just wanted to know if there was a theme that they wanted to share, because I know that it's pandemic overall and so forth, but I just didn't know if there was something embedded in the story I should know about. And then just the story of the group of pictures, the group that they chose. So in asking the questions, for me, some of it is, it's for the photographers first and foremost. And then it informs me when I'm looking at their pictures, sort of, just what I'm looking at and what it means to them. So yeah, that's how we started. And Rita submitted her goals, and Rita, I think I read your stuff before I looked at your pictures. I think that's what happened. And so I was there looking at your goals and the story, and I thought it was really interesting, and I was absolutely intrigued by the story of the found objects and the arrangements and the scenes, and it's something that I also look at in my life all the time, so I could totally relate to it. So yeah, and so Susan, should I show the first?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And if any of the questions that Rita answered are pertinent to the, the first viewing, I would say share those as we're looking at the photos.
Let me see where all my stuff went away. Really? Well, that isn't great. Okay, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to stop screen sharing. That's crazy. I had everything
I
up.
think it was down there. I thought I saw it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Let me just get it up and then come back to you and start the screen share. So, this was Rita's submission. And let me move my screen down so I can go to present. Oops, hang on. Let's go back. Too fast. Okay, so you want me to just slowly go through, Susan?
Yeah, I think just go ahead and let's take a look at the first, sort of what Rita submitted, and people were asked to put them in an order. And then Katherine took a look at that order, asked some more questions. So we'll just go through the first set as they were given.
Right, okay.
And Rita, if you want to share anything about your thoughts or your goals and what you were thinking on this first one, feel free to jump in.
Well, I can go back to the beginning, Rita, if you want to talk.
Yeah, sure. You can just go through them and I can talk while you're doing that. So yeah, I think the way that I kind of interpreted the prompt at first was just submitting a collection of photos, from the pandemic time around a particular project. And like I said, my background is very much like documentary focused, but I do personal work as well. But I kind of was seeing, I'd been photographing these kind of found objects that I had found outside as I was going out, because I was new to the area and because everything was kind of shut down. I felt like to get out of the house, I was just going on a lot of walks around my new neighborhood and going out and hiking. And then I was kind of finding, there were a few different types of objects. So like some of them in cemeteries. So it's like things that people put on graves, for example, but then in like trails in the woods, I would come upon little objects in trees or on the ground. And then just other things, like ruined houses with kind of debris left behind. And so I kind of had this collection of pictures and the different ways that people kind of make a mark on the landscape. And so I thought this was, this went together. And I'm also in a documentary photo practice group through 6 Feet. So that was I was working on this project for that group as well. And it was funny. So when I submitted this, Katherine and I talked and she kind of was like, I feel like I'm not seeing you in these photos. Like I want to see more of you. And I was like, oh, okay. So we need to get more personal. And I was like, well, I have all these other photos, that I've taken that are more personal. And I think it was just, I've been so used to kind of helping tell other people's stories that I often feel like the work I make for myself is very personal and I don't show it as often. And so I was kind of glad for that opportunity to then I went back and reworked a new set of photos, which we'll show later. And that was kind of really more of the personal side. And I guess I don't know if I want to talk too much about that before we actually see it, but yeah, that's a little bit of the process that we went through.
Okay, I think that's it of that. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so then I think taking a look at the body of work that came after your conversation, I think that'll be really fascinating to see how the conversation affected the second choices from Rita.
Yeah, and so I mean, Rita and I we were chatting and got to the point where I felt like it was okay. I asked her permission. I said, "Can I get, can I give a little feedback from my point of view?" And so we had this very honest chat about what I saw, and I just, and again, I'm so intuitive. So guys, there's not like rule books on this stuff. Like I just felt like where I felt like, I definitely saw, it was documented, and and her words and her description were so beautiful. She's such a great wordsmith, and in addition to being a great photographer. So, you know, it's like, how do you crack the code? Sometimes people have it pretty well down. And I feel like I got to always find a way in to maybe suggest something different. And I just felt like maybe it was too cohesive, or maybe it was too comfortable, or maybe we needed to look at tonality. And I definitely wanted to see more of her. I felt like it was absolutely well documented, but I was just wondering if she might want to take another crack at inserting herself more into her own, narrative here, and just as an experiment, Um, again, like there's no like one way through this. And typically when we would work together, I might look at the first batch of stuff and then ask questions, just like I did. And photographers always submit more stuff to me, and then I look at that and we look at it together, and it's a little bit of a process to put together something you feel like incredible about, right? And so let's just keep in mind that this was very like last minute for everyone. The photographers didn't have this like body of work sitting there completed, like ready to launch, So this was kind of just like a fun opportunity to see what else they could do. There's no wrong answers to this. It's just a matter of how much you want to go back and get your hands into the mix again, and push yourself a little bit maybe. So yeah, so this was the first group that I saw. And then Rita, you were like up for going back and seeing what else you could look at, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think I just kind of had like misunderstood, but also been like, oh wow, someone wants to see my personal work, like me. So so yeah, if you want to go through the next set, I can kind of give context.
Rita reprised, we'll call it. Hang on, let me go to present.
So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm pretty new in North Carolina, and so I felt really lucky and grateful during the pandemic because I was staying with friends kind of temporarily while I was looking for a place of my own while I was here, and then the pandemic hit. But it would turn out to be a really nice balance because it was a couple who I was living with, and then my partner was living with us, and so we created like this really nice little family unit. Where we were like cooking meals together, watching movies, and going out on hikes. And so I hope some of that comes through in this photo set, because most of the pictures of people were kind of my housemates. And then, again, just kind of going out and exploring my new environment. And I think maybe because everything was still so new to me, it kind of created more of like a sense of hope and optimism throughout some of the darkness of the pandemic. And so that, I think that's kind of what this set of photos reflects. And as far as kind of what are my goals for the pictures or how I'd like them to be displayed, I definitely really love making photo books. And I think that that's an especially appropriate medium for a project like this, because a photo book, allows a lot more intimacy and connection, whereas like an exhibition is a little more public, and I can see a photo book being more of a private experience. And I also was thinking, I think it's also nice to maybe be able to display the photos in an exhibition format, but do it in a way that's not just like photos on a wall, but really trying to, again, kind of make the medium reflect the content. And then I kind of had this idea. I was thinking today, like, if there are other photographers who kind of have a similar body of work like this, like almost putting a few of those together in a show, and then having almost like little containers for each person, so you can go and experience like, what was this person's world like during the pandemic, and what was this person's world like? Because yeah, I think it's, you know, everybody has their own unique story to tell, and mine isn't necessarily that unique or special, you know, considering that a lot of people, I think, were maybe, we were all, obviously it's, you know, it's a similar experience, but it's a different experience. So showing that range.
Okay, so that is the end of the second group. So I have to comment. Let me stop sharing. Oh, why did I stop sharing? Sorry. Let me go back. Ah, oh no. Did it really go away? Okay. All right. I'm going to stop video so I can pull it up again. Um, Meantime, Rita, while I pull this up, do you mind talking about how your goals changed from the original set to the second one, and kind of how that might have affected the process a little bit and what you chose?
Yeah, I think I'd also kind of interpreted the goals question differently the first time, because I had kind of interpreted that as like, what do you want people to take from these pictures, or like why are you sharing this group of pictures? And so originally I kind of thought like one of my goals was to, or something I was curious about with that set was, you know, what kind of qualifies as like trash and what qualifies as not trash when it's something that someone has left outside. And I could see that line kind of being blurry. So kind of, you know, making people think about their environment in that way. And then just maybe also encouraging people to kind of look closer when they're outside or encountering new places. So, but I think if to interpret the question in the way that you were saying, you know, what are my goals for showing that set? I would say I would have probably, I would want to be more kind of outward facing, because I see that as, again, maybe it's because I'm less in the photos. And so I feel like it's more something that can be displayed and shown without kind of so much of that intimacy. I mean, I think there is intimacy in those photos, but in a different kind of way. So yeah, I think it was a little more difficult curating the second round and being like, well, what do I want to show and what do I want to keep private, and asking myself those questions.
Mm-hmm. A worthy task, though, right?
Yeah, it was a really good exercise, because yeah, again, I feel like I haven't so much done that before.
So I'm happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just pulling up the last one so I have my whole group together. Okay, let me go back to you guys. Right. So cool. So the photographers haven't seen what I've done with their pictures, and I just really just jumped in and had a good time with it. That's what I do. I played with it, and you know, so again, there's no right answers here. It's not like someone else is going to come in and make your stuff different. It's your stuff. It's your integrity, and in the end, it should be the way you want it to be. But it's sometimes interesting to see what an outside person might see as the crux of it, or what are they drawn to. And this is just what I was drawn to make from the second batch of pictures. So here we go. Oopsie, let's go back. Hang on. Yeah, I mean, this one for me was the starter, and I don't have to say about all of them, but like I felt like the mask hanging, like the car that she drove, like to her new life, and like the mask hanging there, and then like looked like almost like a dream catcher, like a pandemic dream catcher with the freaking mask in the middle of it, right? It just struck me as like the crux of it all. So I had to start with this picture. It told me to. So what can I tell you? I follow the pictures. Yeah, and then like looking up at your new vista, I almost felt like that person almost had like one of those like hazmat suits on in my brain. So it's just so freaky, right? Absolutely 6 feet apart. You measured it, right?
Socially distanced hike with like a friend who didn't live with us. So yeah, keeping the distance.
Crazy. Yeah. Again, you can see the mask. It just there's little elements of the macro and it's just all there, and the exploration of the new space. The things that are left. I mean, did you put those there?
No, that was how I found it.
Yeah. Beautiful. I mean, there's a little hope. There's always a little hope in there. Gorgeous. So you just like happened upon this and this little message?
Yeah, yeah. This was like after the quarantine had started, but it was just on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I mean, abandoned. Just perfect. It's so perfect. Okay, so I did play with a couple. I ended up throwing a couple pieces together because I was putting them into Google Slides and I could do it. Remember, guys, when you do this, you can play with your pictures and like put multiple ones on the same page. And I mean, you've done this, Rita. You've made multiple books, and the value of putting them together. And ultimately, if it wasn't a book, they would all be communicating much better than on this Google Slide presentation. So I kind of enjoyed putting some of them together as I could, as they allowed me by format.
This is actually really funny because I was going to submit to Judith Puckett-Rennell's prompt, who did the Make Me Feel prompt a few weeks ago, and I missed the deadline, but I still wanted to do the exercise for myself, and I was having a really hard time cutting it down to 5, and I had 8 pictures, and I sent it to my friend Danny, who's another photographer, and she's on this call, but she came back and she paired those 8 photos like into sets and was like, these actually make really great diptychs.
Yeah.
And so actually, I already was thinking about doing that with this series, so I'm really excited that you came to that conclusion as well.
Yeah, I would love more if they could, again, by format to fit in the Google Slides was my limitation, but yeah, I thought it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Home, your new home, it's just like all the vibes. I mean, who can resist that? I mean, come on. I mean, for the symbolism of what we're all going through, it's like, it's right in front of our faces. It's beautiful. I even managed to put those together on my little silly slide that barely fits anything, but they spoke to each other for me. I don't know, in different ways.
Yeah, I like that.
I had to end with, we're just going slow right now. Okay, we're just going slow. So that was what I put together from your reprisal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool to see that. And I think what you were saying, I mean, it's so hard for someone who's taken the photos, to get that perspective from their work. So yeah, I can totally see why you made the choices you made, and it's really cool.
Yay, thank you. Yay. That's awesome. Very cool. So yeah, I mean, typically, the process involves a little bit of that, a little give and take, a little bit of like trial. I'm going to go back and dig in, and I always ask people to send me more. Like, okay, even if there's a picture I love, and I'm like, okay, this is good, but like, show me some outtakes from that. Like, we'll try to find the one that has the most impact, or you know what I mean? There's a little of that usually if you have a little time, if you have time. But yeah, I think that was a super fun experiment, Rita.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I really enjoyed comparing the answers to the questions that you had the first time versus the second time. Like the first time, your goals were much more nebulous, and the second time they were more specific. And then your target audience was, the first time you said could be anybody, and the second time you were like, people who are interested in, you got more specific about it. And I just feel like that helps drive your decision making, right?
Yeah. Well, and that was as a result of talking with you. Yeah, because you were like, once you explained the questions, I think that really helped.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Wonderful. I love it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rita. I really appreciate your willingness to be generous with your work and your time.
Yeah, thank you for creating this opportunity. This was really cool and special.
So, yeah, so I guess we can move. Should we move on to Monica?
Yeah, Monica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Monica Merva. I'm a photographer, and I've been doing this for quite some time. And I do it because I love photography. I've been looking at photographs ever since I can remember, from National Geographic to Vogue to Harper's Bazaar. And it really made me want to go ahead and express myself, my feelings, my ideas through photographs. And I've been deeply influenced by documentary and reportage work, especially photographers out of Europe. I must admit, I am Hungarian, and there's a dozen great Hungarian photographers that I'm deeply influenced by and proud to follow or try and follow in their footsteps. So what can I say? I think that's enough, and I'll let my photographs speak for themselves.
So before we jump in, again, Monica was asked the same questions. What are your goals? And is there an overarching theme? And tell me the story. And so that, that's how we began the process. And now, Monica, did those questions inform some of the choices you made, or had you already made this body of work in this way?
I already made this body of work, and then I received the questions later, and I had a really busy day yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this was all set before I saw those questions. But I think that the questions that you asked are always in the back of my mind already, thinking about an audience, what's the story that I want to tell, and who do I want them to see, which is the audience.
Mm-hmm. So with Monica's group of pictures, it's deeply personal work. So again, I wanted to make sure that I spoke to Monica and that we connected, and that she felt it was okay for me to do anything with these these pictures because, this is her family life, and it's intense and it's beautiful and it's poignant and it's real. But so, and then looking at Monica's, CV, it's like the size, the length of my arm, all the exhibitions and all the things around the world she's been part of. And then also to find out she teaches photography I'm like, okay, so what do I do with this one? But, I feel like no matter where you are in your career, no matter where you are in your life's work, if you are open to it, you can receive input that might make one little adjustment, make one little suggestion that sends you in another direction that you think, I didn't think of that myself. So I think these conversations are always healthy to do. You really can't lose from them. I'm certainly not here to judge anyone or to make criticism. Critique is very different than criticism, for sure. And so for me, the more I can know a person, is the better I can make a better choice to how I say something, how I suggest something. And I'm very, I try to be delicate about it because, I know how personal it is, this stuff, So when I looked, it's funny because Monica got chosen, and actually 3 of her pictures I had chosen for my choice of my 33 pictures from all the pictures last time I spoke. So I had already been familiar with, so then I saw, she's one of them. And I said, I already love, her pictures and stuff. So that was easy for me to jump in, and I was already a little bit familiar with some of the work. And then I had the opportunity to look at her submissions. I want to say there were probably about 30, I don't know. So I did what I do. I uploaded them, and I'm looking and I'm going one by one, and I'm just absolutely overwhelmed with emotion. So I'm sitting in here, like tears are rolling down my face, and I'm looking at them and going, okay, wow, holy shit, oof, okay. It's poignant and beautiful and real and full of dignity and grace and just life, relationship, family, passages, all the things that are going on. And in this crazy time, everything just seems more important, like the littlest things are more important that you notice about your loved ones. So I enjoyed it. And so I went through and I had a look at them, and Monica, really, you didn't have very much time either. Like, we haven't had much time. Like, right, you looked at it, I looked at it, and then I said, do you want me to tweak, you do my thing? And you said yes, and that's what we did. So, so let's go ahead and take a look at Monica's work. Hang on, we can go back. Okay. And Monica, if you want to jump in and say anything, you can. If you don't, and you just want the pictures to speak, that's totally cool as well.
I'll just let them speak for themselves right now, and then when we go through an edit or something,
okay.
When we go through your edit, I can say something. Or if someone has a question, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. I did not notice the first time I chose this picture that there is a shadow of a bunny in the shot. You see it?
That's why I took it because of the bunny. I do have a little love of surrealism.
Yes. But it's crazy that I loved this picture the first time I saw it. And then the second time I went, oh my God, there's also a bunny in it. So.
Well, I love that I gave you something else.
Thank you.
After your love already.
Gave me a little present. Thank you.
a little phototherapy in this one.
Oh my God, I saw that. And I was like, okay, phototherapy right there.
I mean, it's not a great image, but
Hmm.
I took it out in my final edit. So I guess I would like to say something.
Hmm.
Is there are a few images in there that I, 4 or 5 of them that I wasn't sure of which would be the best image. Clearly there's the 2 of the cherries, which, you know, in the end I would not select. And I was just curious to see what Katherine would say to them, you know, what she would select. Because it depends on like what kind of mood you're going for, or the whole body of work, what makes it cohesive. So there's 3 or 4 images that are sort of repeats
Right.
that I left in there so that we could work that out together and figure that out.
Hmm. Yep.
And since I submitted this, I've taken about 10 or 12 more photographs that are uh, essential to this branch of this body of work.
Wow. Essential. Good word. Okay. All right. I mean, rock and roll, you know, this is an ongoing thing for you. And you talked about that maybe some of this would go into your origins body of work. Um, you know, it's quite possible that how you add to this is going to be something that you would submit. I can see a lot of things that are going to take off from this time and from, you know, the opportunity the photographers have to submit pictures to a lot, whether they're group exhibitions or they're, you know, different avenues that are going to be important for people to see. So I would love to see that, Monica. I really would love to be in on, you know, what you do with this stuff for sure, especially if you're going to fold it into origins, you know.
Yes, I would love to continue a dialogue with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. So you have to forgive me. I mean, I dove into your personal work and I made something out of it a little bit different, you know, but you said I could, so.
That's what I want. I want that. I want that.
Okay.
And I want to see if you edited out the ones that I did earlier today. So I'm going to be really excited, like making little points here, like yes, no, yes, it worked out.
Well, and so
We're on the same page.
yeah, I mean, again, like my parameter, like I have to work with the constraint of the Google slide here.
Yeah.
So it's very different than real life. Like real life, we can like flesh it out and like there's no, there's a lot more available to our choices than what we can do. So, but for the sake of the group and to present, we want to make it, sort of tied up and neat and easy to share and to show. So I played with it in a different way. Let me find what I did. Let's go. Close your eyes.
Boom.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
I do love diptychs.
Oh,
Yeah, see, I did. Yeah. Okay. Good.
I just went with my gut.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's right there. It's so clear. I can't even stand it.
Well, and again, the format of the pictures dictate what I can do in this format too. So like, you know what I mean? Like, because you had pictures that fit too on, I could do this.
Yeah.
And so that's fun. So I was able to get that shot in without.
See, I took the mirror and the reflection, I took that one out. The one on the left, but that's cool. I'll show you what I did later.
Okay, yeah.
I want to see what you're doing.
Yeah, I just, these have all their own little communication, their own little dialogue. It's different.
Mm-hmm. I showed that one to my mom, and she thought I was doing collages.
Wait, that one?
No, this one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she's like, "Are you doing collage work now?" I was like, "No, Mom, no." And then my husband saw it, he thought it too, and I was like, "No, it's one straight photograph."
Yeah, there is like a strange optical illusion with the front picture there.
Yeah. And it lines up really nicely. The column, that blue column in the back there.
Yeah, almost perfectly, yeah.
Stuff like that excites me.
I know, me too. I'm weird like that.
It's very geometric.
So I mix things up in a way I know you wouldn't do it. So I just had fun with it.
Yeah.
I went with my gut.
No, I get that.
Like the first time I did the order, it was totally different. And then I went today to finish, to whatever, prepare, and I was like, wait a minute. So I changed it all.
So what I'm noticing is that in my sequence, I believe the car park was after the rabbit. So you're putting it before my sequencing.
Yeah, so I have no rules.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no. I think this is great. I just love seeing that. Because that'll happen with my students when I'm sequencing their work. Mm-hmm. They might have something on the left and I want that one on the right. Like do that. And I just wonder if that's just how we see how we're reading the world.
Well, and and the fun part is you flip them and you go, oh, okay. And you just, when you flip them, which one is right.
Yeah.
For that. But like, they're kind of, the hard part about this format is that you can't see it all together. So I have to just do it, but they make more sense when you see them all. There's like a little that goes into each one that feeds the next one.
Mm-hmm. See, I took the one with the no allergies out. I took it out, but this is great here.
I had to have it because, I went through this too with my own dad, and I knew, and I've been there, and I saw this, and I was like, wow, this little receipt from the hospital or whatever, it has his name on it and his date of birth, no known allergies, smart balance. I was like, and just everything about it. I mean, it said so much to me about your dad and the situation. And then I struggled with
gives it context, gives it context.
Mm-hmm.
And the two little butters are sort of
Oh my God.
in that wet receipt, just like he's being cradled in his blanket.
So I hope, I was worried that it was like not being respectful, putting your dad's
No.
picture next to that. I
Oh,
actually,
no, absolutely. I'm so down with this.
all right. Um, and that is how I ended it, because I thought your parents, you know, seeing them like as the quintessential Americanized version, you know, what is the piece that you did?
American Gothic.
Yeah. And then the little bowl of cherries, it's like life is still a bowl of cherries. And, you know, I know your dad sees it that way, right? Like he's got this humor, he has this wonderful zest for life. And I think that's the way he would want it. There's still some cherries in the bowl.
Yeah, and he was willing to go out, dress up, put on these fake glasses that are not his, hold a pitchfork for his daughter for a project. But I only had 20 minutes to do it, the whole thing.
Wow.
Wardrobe to set.
Is this at SCAD?
No, this is me. No, SCAD was in like 97.
Okay.
This is me being a faculty member, and the faculty decided to do the whole thing of like recreate a master piece of artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And we were each given a painting, and this is the painting I was given, American Gothic. And so you can go ahead and recreate it in whatever your medium is. So I did it in a photograph.
So yeah, that's kind of it's short, but this is how I played with it and came up with a story based on what I learned from you.
No, I absolutely agree.
So yeah, that's pretty much what we've done, Susan.
That's so fantastic. Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Catherine. Really appreciate it. We are going to open up to questions. We've got 20 minutes to go, and I'm sure some of you have some questions you'd love to ask. You can start to type them in the chat window, and as they come up, I may call on you or I may just read them out. So feel free to start doing that. And people are also leaving lots of wonderful comments.
Oh, I'm not even in the comments. Should I stop the share?
Sure.
Let's go back for a second.
Unless you want to go back to any of them, you're welcome to switch back in.
Oh, look, there's comments. I haven't seen it. I've been so
I
busy.
know. Does anybody have any questions? You can ask anything you want, potentially about editing your own work or processes that Catherine used to edit this work. Or if Monica or Rita have any questions that they're still sitting on, that's cool too. I have a question, Catherine. So you talked about this difference between editing personal work and then sort of professional work. And yet both you and Judith had talked about really that often when people bring you portfolios, you actually prefer that you get to see people's really personal work. Mm-hmm. But that's like kind of a different edge, right? If you're coming to someone because, say, they're running Entrepreneur Magazine and you bring them your personal stuff. So usually do you recommend that people have like a tight 5 or tight 10 of their professional and then bring a personal portfolio with them? Or how do you like to see that personal work show up?
I think the personal work can show up in many different ways. I mean, you should, if you're having an in-person meeting and you're sharing a portfolio in person, you should always bring something personal. You know, I've seen them taped, you know, I've seen like all kinds of artistic ways people have brought personal work into the mix. Again, you can also have it, you know, if you have a blog or if you have, you know, in your Instagram feed or in your story or whatever, there's different ways to share it these days than, but there's really great old school ways to make personal work too. I think that, you know, I tried to use some of the same criteria in our talk today because I knew you said people were interested in kind of how to approach editing in general. So I made that criteria, but the difference for me is, and again, the thing about asking what your goal is and who you think might be looking at your work, it just really helps no matter what you're doing to focus, right? Because
Yeah.
this can go on and on and on. And so you have to, I think Rita used the word container at some point in our conversation, and having a container for the work. It's really important. So at some point, your masterpiece is finished. You have to put like an end to that piece, right? Somehow. I just think that if you're showing, look, not everyone wants to see your personal work. It's not like everyone wants to see your personal work. I think everyone I know who's in the industry wants to see your personal work, but there must be people who don't, who are like so busy that they just want to see what you brought in and what they asked for, and that's it. But there are ways that you can share it that I think it's just a window into, really is a window to your soul. It really is. I mean, it should be. It really should be. And it should be a little bit of a departure from any kind of a commercial or more business side of the work. It certainly should be a departure. It's just not interesting for me to look at personal work that looks the same. It's like, come on, reveal yourself a little bit, like show something a little bit different about yourself. This is your chance to, really do something, outside of the lines, right?
Perfect. Let's see. We've got a longer question from Anna, but I'm going to wait on that one a minute because I'm going to let her ask that one herself because I'm not sure I'm clear on what she's asking. But Brenda did want to know, Katherine, when you talked about tonality, how would you approach a very long-term project with different films, cameras, and a personal evolution has actually taken place within that body of work?
Well, I don't know how tonality is in, if you're a long-term project with different mediums. I mean, tonality you can bring in to everything if you want to. I mean, it's the way you choose things. It's the way you decide what is part of, so I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of medium that you're using. I think a long-term project with different mediums is just going to be, much more complex decision making. And so I don't know, I'm not really sure about how tonality, when I talk about tonality, I'm literally talking about like the tone of the pictures, like the, blue tones or the red tones or the tone of the, of the of the picture, not the tone like the mood.
Gotcha. Thank you. Susan Reeves wants to know, what physical way do you think is the best way to show a portfolio now? Does it need to be printed, matted large? Is a digital slideshow acceptable? So in this era, how are you seeing work? How are people sharing work with you these days?
Everybody is sharing digitally because of necessity. And I think that is the way it's going to go. So you have to start to be adept at editing your work and showing it in a digital way. I think whenever possible, people love to see actual prints. People who love photography really just enjoy, looking at prints, and whether they're just in a box or they're matted in a box. I think it's wonderful. You can certainly send people something like that. It just depends on what you're looking to do. I think that, touching the pictures and like feeling and like, there's nothing quite like the tactile expression of a printed photograph. But you really, I mean, first and foremost, you have to be able to share your work digitally these days. Absolutely.
And what would you consider a body of work? Like, is there a sort of set number of prints? Like when you like to look at a portfolio, do you have kind of a magic number that you feel just is great?
So again, I mean, look, if it's personal, there's no rules. If it's professional, I think the rule of thumb is, 25 to 40. is the rule of thumb in like any commercial portfolio. You don't want to go too much over 40 because it can get really cumbersome. And you're really on the hook to keep it cohesive, right? So like to get to 40, like make sure that you have this body that all goes together and tells a story. You know, it's one of the reasons why people have different books. So they'll show their still life separate from their food, separate, you know, like their specialties separated. Mm-hmm. Some of that has to do with the fact that, you know, people in the art buying and the gatekeepers of the industry just really, they're just a little tone deaf, really, like about like, you know, they have the blinders on and they're like, this is what, you know, my client wants, and this is like all they can see, and that's all they want to see. So you really end up confusing them and maybe annoying them if you send them other stuff. So you definitely always have to think about who you're presenting to. So, you know, if there's a call to action and it's like, please submit 20 photos to be considered to be part of this pitch for something, then, you know, you darn well better send 20 photos that are like in the lane that they want. So those are, you know, it just depends. If you have, you know, 10 years of amazing, you know, rock portraiture of like musicians or whatever, you know, 40 is a reasonable amount that you're going to put in. So it just depends on kind of what it is and how much meat there is. Like, how much do you have? Like, don't go over what's great. You know, if it's fantastic at 20 or 25, please just show that. You know what I mean? It's just, that's kind of the, you know, 25 to 40 usually.
Perfect. Thank you. So I want to make sure, because we're starting to have people hop, and then we've got a couple more questions queued up, but I want to just make sure we do a couple of quick announcements. One, I just put in the chat window, Katherine has been really generous and offered a special discount to any 6 Feet community members who want to go through a portfolio review process with her. If you click on that link, it'll take you to the website, and then there's a link there that will allow you to directly send Katherine an email and request to have an exploratory conversation or to schedule a time to do a review with her. And jumping off of where she left off of that 4th step with how do we disseminate our work out into the world, next week, Eric Kunzman's going to be with us. He's also here on the call, so we're happy to have him here. As we start to think about what it means to navigate a professional practice, but especially for photographers as we're talking about personal work, how to build an authentic and professional photography practice. And from Eric's perspective, it comes from placing the community in the center of the work. And he is going to be sharing very generously with us. Actually, we did a preliminary talk last night, and I was like madly taking notes while he was talking about the ins and outs of navigating a professional practice, including the limitations and benefits of editing your own work and the vulnerable terrain of managing rejections and the critical role of community in this process. And he's also got a few surprising secrets that are going to really help us along our path. And if you don't know Eric, he is a photographer and book artist and a printmaker, an educator, a collaborator, and most generously, a mentor to many, many, many emerging photographers. So he's going to bring his generosity to us next week, again here Thursday night at 7 o'clock, to help us start to navigate this terrain of how we start to put our work out in the world, and some of the great ways that he's successfully done that. And of course, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please do that. You will get the This Week at 6 Feet newsletter in your inbox every Monday that tells you calls for entry and other events that we have coming up. So let's see, I want to circle back. Who remembers? Oh, Anna Rose Ferris. She had a question, and I was having a little trouble interpreting some of it. And so I thought if she was willing.
Yes, I unmute myself.
Oh, good. Okay, there she is.
Yeah,
So
I can't put on
Anna.
the video. I'm having technical difficulties.
No worries.
So I was wondering, like, when the work that she selected at first, when we went through it, there was so much emotion, you know, like serious, crying and laughing literally. And that's what Katherine said is she felt too when she was looking through it. There was a lot of emotion. And I was wondering I'm curious what Katherine's first edit looked like. And then the second edit she did, I felt like a lot of that emotion was taken out of it. Like the up and the down, and I don't know, just a lot of emotion. And was that on purpose? Was there a different purpose in the ones that she selected? You know what I mean? Or am I the only one thinking this?
Well, I guess I don't know. I can say that when I spoke to Monica and we talked about what she thought she might use the body for, she said she admitted she probably wouldn't have a lot of, sorry, is that on my screen? No. Like too much of the emotion, like too much of the raw, like bad stuff. So I thought, well, let me just go to what I felt like drawn to capturing in the most concise way. And it wasn't like I was trying to take stuff away to take away from her experience or her story. It was just that, I had a little bit of information, and I also thought, unless, look, if Monica said, look, I'm making this thing and it's all about my dad, then we would probably take a different tact, and then we would be choosing pictures in a different way, and the whole thing would look entirely different. But she really talked about her family and that all the years that they always spend time together, and I really felt like, there was a combination of distress going on, but like a lifetime, a little bit of capsule of like, the soothing comfort of the bunny and the normal things of looking at family photos together. And there was a variety of things that sort of explained what was going on right now, not just, the bleakness of her dad and this process of end of life stuff. So I guess that kind of explains.
So it's more like a family framework as opposed to this big event and COVID. Yeah, was more your capsule.
Well, I think it's in the time of the pandemic for sure. Yeah. But I also, when I look at the pictures after I've had the information in my brain, then the pictures just speak to me, and then I take everything out of my brain. I literally empty it. Once I look at the pictures, I literally am just there, and they're speaking to me, and I'm just,
got you,
playing with them. That's it.
Yeah.
And then it's this order, and I have to say, what do you think? Does it make sense to you?
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's so interesting.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. It was my honor to look at the pictures.
I would like to add to that. Anna is a dear friend of mine who has seen my work for over 20 years now. And I understand what she was asking, like and I'll talk with her later about that. But for me, looking at your edit, I was really excited to see it. And I am 90% there. There's probably one image I would have added, and that's it.
Wow.
So I'm like tight with you on your philosophy and the way that you were reading my images and helping to tell my story.
Wow.
So there's probably just one I would add to it. So I think that's pretty hot, don't you?
Considering we spoke for like a half an hour and I didn't know you before.
Yeah, like, that's amazing. I think that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you kept one in that I wouldn't have, and then you took one out that I did want. So I think, we broke even on this for the first go around.
It's great odds. I like it.
But I still feel, and I hope that Anna still feels that the emotion is still in there, because I see it. I see it there.
And again, this is a short form presentation, right? A long form presentation that you would make was entirely different. So that's the fun of it.
Yeah, and also the subject matter that I took on is really difficult for other human beings. It's difficult because one, it's not their people, but also we're afraid to see that. It can be really beneficial for people who have gone through that or are preparing to go through that, or who are interested in experiencing human emotions all the time. Like, I am ready to get down and dirty all the time, because why bother like being on the planet? You know, that's why like the photographs I take are very personal, because I am me and I have my point of view on things. And if I can help not just myself move through them, I can help others, then I am so excited and ready to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you do with the stuff, going forward. But yeah, I mean, you could obviously, you only chose 30 pictures initially, which isn't very much. And then, so, I mean, this thing could be a vast body of work. I'm sure it is. But,
and I'm a tough critic already. So that's why it was like so bare bones.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for letting me.
Yes, of course. I'm,
like that.
Good for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think I also really, enjoyed seeing your edit, and I want to look at it again because I'm trying to still kind of figure out which photos were not included. I think there might be a few that I would maybe want to include. But again, I think it was really helpful because a lot of them, I was just really curious, to see how is someone else going to see this work. And so to have you kind of go through and pick things out and put things together was really interesting to see.
Well,
it also kind of makes me, I think I'm thinking of ways in which, and I kind of talked about this before, that I felt like the story was maybe a little too broad or a little too still all encompassing. And I'm kind of having more ideas of how I can maybe focus the work a little more, especially now having seen it edited. So yeah, it's really been generative.
Awesome. Well, I understand, Rita, that there were pictures that I loved that I wanted to include, but I couldn't make them fit in my way in this format.
Yeah.
Like, again, if we had a different format, I think there would be a lot more leeway. But still, I always want the most punch for you. I want it to be like the essence. It's like squeezing it out. And then you can always add more. It's just that you start and you sort of go, and then there's a conversation. You have it with yourself, or you have it with me, or you have it with somebody else. And, that's how it goes. But thank you guys both so much. And thank you, Susan, for your idea and for making me put words to my process. And I've never done that before. So everybody understand, this is my first time putting words to what I do like this. So I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And everyone knows the time it takes to go through work and to have meaningful conversations. And you've been so incredibly generous with your time, and just really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's been really cool to be part of the community. Thank you, everyone.
And before you go, I stuck the link for next week's talk in the chat window. So if you click on that as you exit, you can go ahead and just get signed up to be here next week. And does anybody have a closing question they want to throw out before we go? Anybody sitting on anything important?
I just want to tell Rita that it was really exciting to see your personal work.
Thank you. Yeah.
There was just, it felt like one veil was lifted looking at it. I mean, it was very similar to your documentary work, but definitely it just let us in a little more and sort of shifted the point of view, which I think is really important because you're the one behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hard to be objective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. That's just me. And
Whoops.
being objective when you're a photographer. I don't know. Maybe this is a conversation for another time. But beautiful work.
Yeah, you as well. And I just told you in the chat, but I really enjoyed also seeing, the process with someone else as well. So I'm glad that it wasn't just one photographer for this talk.
Yeah. We had each other there.
Yeah.
And with that said, everybody keep submitting your work. We have a whole bunch of new curators coming on. We're talking to 3 new people this week, and we have some stuff in the works that might actually result in some printed, some publishing. And so anyway, just keep putting your submissions in, and keep using that Life at 6 Feet hashtag. If you're not using it already, we've got a number of curators who are curating primarily from the hashtag. So as you still make images during this time, hashtag Life at 6 Feet. And but most of all, we're so grateful for your time. Life is getting busy for so many people, and this is our Thursday night community gathering, and there's not community without you. And so we just really, really appreciate you continuing to prioritize this community gathering on Thursday nights. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
I guess I'll see you then.
Yes. Katherine, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Susan. Bye, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. I'll talk to you later, Susan.
Bye,
Or I'll talk to you now. Are we all just hanging out?
I usually hang out for a minute and just make sure nobody's got lingering questions, or yeah. And I'll try to remember to send you all the chat window stuff, because people always have such nice things to say.
Thanks. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Rita.
Bye.